Good afternoon. It's Thursday, January 28th. I'm Aryeh O'Sullivan, and this is IBA News broadcasting from Jerusalem. The condition of a 36-year-old Israeli man who was stabbed by a Palestinian terrorist outside a gas station in Givat Zeev, northwest of Jerusalem, last night remains serious but stable. The man underwent surgery at the Shaarei Tzedek Hospital in Jerusalem and remains in intensive care. He was attacked by a 17-year-old Palestinian who was captured by bystanders as he attempted to flee the scene. The terrorist was lightly injured by angry civilians who attacked him. He was taken to Hadassah Hospital on Mount Scopus. A small crowd tried to block the ambulance but were quickly dispersed by police. Surveillance footage shows how the Palestinian teenager followed a couple walking towards the restaurant at the gas station. The footage shows him running towards them but does not show the actual stabbing attack. As the terrorist fled, he lightly injured a second person before throwing the knife on the ground. A second knife was later found in his possession. Security was tight in Nicosia today, where Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu arrived to take part in the first trilateral meeting with his Greek and Cypriot counterparts. The summit focused on issues related to energy, economy, and tourism. Prior to talks today, Netanyahu met with Greek Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras, who was in Jerusalem yesterday. The meeting marked the 25th anniversary of the upgrading of diplomatic relations between the two countries, and the two leaders signed a bilateral agreement pertaining to energy issues. Netanyahu declared Greece a true friend of Israel.
And in this G2G meeting, we'll take further steps to strengthen this partnership in diplomacy and defense, in cybersecurity, counterterrorism, in economics, trade, energy, and innovation. Energy also includes not merely discussing the possibilities of using our offshore gas, but also connecting Israel, Cyprus, and Greece with an electricity cable.
For the first time, U.S. President Barack Obama spoke at the Israeli embassy in Washington, where he attended a ceremony marking International Holocaust Memorial Day. The event honored 4 righteous Gentiles who protected Jews from the Nazis during World War II. On hand to greet the president was Israeli envoy to Washington Ron Dermer and acclaimed Jewish director Steven Spielberg. Obama warned of the growing threat of anti-Semitism, declaring that any attack on any faith is an attack on all faiths.
We are all Jews. We know that we'll never be able to wipe out hatred from every single mind. We won't entirely erase the scourge of anti-Semitism. But like the righteous, we must do everything we can. All of us have a responsibility. When Israel faces terrorism, we stand up forcefully and proudly in defense of our ally, in defense of our friend, in defense of the Jewish state of Israel. America's commitment to Israel's security remains now and forever unshakable. And I've said this before, it would be a fundamental moral failing if America broke that bond.
Anti-Semitism is on the rise in Europe, particularly in Great Britain and France. This according to Moshe Kantor, who was elected for a 3rd term as president of the European Jewish Congress at the organization's general meeting earlier this week. The grim warning was echoed by Roger Zuckerman, president of the Council of French Jewish Institutions, who added that the Jewish community was being targeted not just by Islamists, but also by the far right.
It's very serious, because every year 40% more in statistics. The last 3 years, 40% more. And I'm speaking about serious attacks, serious offensive events. But another problem, that not in all countries this statistics is correct. For example, in Great Britain, it's done very professional. And they have the maximum anti-Semitic cases. Not because the situation is the worst in Europe, because they calculate correctly. But the absolute champion in severe cases is France.
Jews are living in France for the last 2,000 years. We got the full French citizenship at the time of the revolution in 1791. And to see now that we are like second-grade citizens having to be protected by the police and by the army is pretty unacceptable. And this is not, as if it was not enough, we have also the danger of a growing extreme right political party, the Front National, which doesn't express any anti-Semitism as of today, but all the descendants of the collaborators of the Nazis during the Second World War are within this party, and it complements a very bad atmosphere for the Jews in France today.
Joining me now in the studio to shed some light on the top news stories of the week is Amos Asael, a senior columnist for the Jerusalem Post and the Dow Jones Market Watch. Thanks for joining us, Amos.
How are you?
Well, let's begin with the latest. The Prime Minister now is in Cyprus, where together with the Greek Prime Minister and the Cyprus Prime Minister, they're going to be signing some deals. What's the trilateral agreement here that's going on?
Well, basically, this is the improbable but very promising aftermath of the crisis in Israel's relations with Turkey over the past half decade. Israel found an alternative regional ally in the form of Greece and its own satellite, Cyprus, namely the Greek Cyprus. And the substance of the alliance lies, first of all, in economics. Both the Greek and the Cypriot economies have in recent years been extremely stressed. That is famous. And in addition to that, there is a military side that people speak of less, but it is no secret that in the days when Israel's relationship with Turkey was warm, the Israeli Air Force was routinely exercising in Turkish skies. And this is now happening above Greece.
Well, speaking about military exercises, the defense minister, Moshe Yaalon, was in Athens yesterday, and he pretty much blasted Turkey and saying that they have to stop supporting the Islamic State and stop buying oil from them. There have been attempts to reconcile between Israel and Turkey. Were these statements by the defense minister going to harm that?
I don't think so at all. What Defense Minister Yaalon was saying is basically what is being said about Turkey throughout the West, beginning in Washington. There's nothing new about it or provocative, and moreover, the effort to reconcile between Jerusalem and Ankara is well underway, and it is driven by vested interests. The Turks now need, strategically, Israel's gas. They have a whole situation with Russia that we have nothing to do with, but we stand to benefit from, because we cannot deliver them what they suddenly don't have or might lose in the wake of their conflict with Russia. And therefore, the rapprochement that is underway between Israel and Turkey will not be blocked by anyone's verbal utterances.
So you're pretty optimistic something is going to move forward here?
I think everyone understands, first of all, that with the depth of the crisis only reached the diplomatic aspects. Economically speaking, the relationship continued to thrive, except for tourism, which for us was anecdotal. I mean, the numbers were big, but it's very simple for an Israeli family planning a summer vacation in Turkey to go to a neighboring country instead, like Bulgaria. And from the Turks' viewpoint, the Israelis' departure from their tourism industry was also marginal, because it's that big now that they're losing the Russians. They need the Israelis back. But having said all this, it was all about diplomacy and military relations. Economically speaking, the relationship continued to thrive. And I think that now the rapprochement also begs some diplomatic reconciliation, and it's underway.
So we've been talking about diplomacy. Let's move to politics. Okay, we have Isaac Herzog, the head of the Zionist Union, was off in Paris this week, and he was saying that now is not the time to be making any sort of deal for a two-state solution. And first, we have to separate from the Palestinians. What's he up to?
Well, he has made some of his own party colleagues very angry with these pronouncements, beginning with Sheli Yachimovitch's predecessor as party leader. But what he does is very politically sound. He's trying to centrify himself and Labor out of a cold analysis that if Labor is ever to return to power, it will not be thanks to the vote or to the electorate that is to its left, but to the electorate that is in the center, that is to its right, more specifically Lapid and the more moderate people who vote Likud. With this kind of attitude, he stands a chance to possibly harness this kind of electorate.
Is that a maneuver to get into the government?
It's being interpreted this way by many people, and there is a widespread assumption that he's never confirmed that he would happily march into Netanyahu's coalition, and everyone understands that the foreign ministership awaits him. Netanyahu is holding it himself so as ultimately give it to some new coalition partner, and everyone agrees, including Netanyahu, that Herzog personally is very eligible for this position. But whether or not he is actually planning this, I think nobody knows, maybe except his wife.
We saw earlier that the President Obama was attending a ceremony at the Israeli embassy in Washington last night for the Holocaust Memorial. Well, this is the first time that the President has done this. What are the underlying meanings of this?
I think that as the Obama presidency approaches its twilight, he, first of all, personally has a quest to mend walls with Israel and all of its many American supporters, whether Jewish or not. And beyond that, there is also a sense in the Beltway and well beyond it that the low ebb at which American-Israeli relations arrived in the wake of the deal with Iran reached too low. And from everyone's viewpoint, including even some very anti-Israeli or Americans who are very critical of Israel, even from their viewpoint, there is a pressing need for a sense of reconciliation, because what is happening right now in the Middle East is so disconcerting for Americans that they understand that if there is one bastion in the Middle East of stability and predictability and pro-Americanism, it's right here in the Jewish state.
Well, Mozart Se'el of the Dow Jones Market Watch and Jerusalem Post, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Ari.
A total of 6 soldiers will be relieved from command for their role in the training accident at the Tzilim base earlier this month, in which 23-year-old Captain Yishai Rosales was killed. IDF Chief of Staff Gadi Eisenkot upheld the recommendations of a probe, which called the incident a combination of negligence and serious professional incompetence. The men whose army service will be cut short include the Armored Corps Battalion Commander, his deputy, 2 other officers, and 2 soldiers. A disciplinary mark was registered in the personal file of the commander of the Armored Corps training base, who was also reprimanded. Rosales, an immigrant from Mexico, was standing with a group of soldiers when he was hit by shrapnel from a mortar shell that strayed from its target. Well, now to something maybe a bit more heartwarming. One of the country's largest booksellers has announced that it will materialize the dream of terror victim Shlomit Kriegman, who was killed this past Monday in the Beit Horon stabbing attack. The 24-year-old resident of Shtamot Mechula, who recently had moved to Beit Horon, had envisioned creating a system of mini-urban libraries to encourage reading. Sametsky's book said it would implement the free community-run initiative at bus stops across the country in honor of Kriegman's memory and her love of books. Kriegman had completed her bachelor's degree in industrial design at the Ariel University, where she submitted an outline of her idea for her senior project. Even archaeology can become controversial when one side charges the other side of manipulating the past for its present goals. As part of a new initiative, the Antiquities Authority is reaching out to Arab students in an attempt to expose them to the history buried in this land. Students from Jewish schools in Moshav Mechula and Kibbutz Tirat Tzvi and Muslims from Kfar Tabaria are busy uncovering the ancient past near Beit Sha'an. The Antiquities Authority is placing great importance in having students from both the Arab and Jewish sectors working together to expose the past. It's an effort to strengthen their bond to the land and their heritage. The Antiquities Authority is often perceived by Arabs as a government body that serves Zionist ideologies, focusing often on the Jewish layers of history. But archaeologists say this endeavor was aimed at breaking that perception. At this salvation dig, they uncovered the remains of a Canaanite village that was here 4,000 years ago. This kiln produced pots, some of which were dug up whole. In a time when many in Israel are dealing with separating 2 peoples, these digs of Jews and Muslims together are uncovering something else. A desire to get to know the common ground of alternative cultures, today and 4,000 years ago. Avid sports enthusiasts from all over the world are heading down south to take part in the annual Israman competition in Eilat, which kicks off tomorrow. Israel's largest triathlon, the local version of the international Ironman, is considered one of the most demanding tests of human strength. Over 1,500 men and women from nearly 30 countries are set to take part in the event, which features a 3.8-kilometer swim, a 180-kilometer bike ride, and no less than a 42-kilometer stretch run in the mountains of Eilat. Competitors looking for a slightly less challenging course can choose the half Israman competition. Good luck with that. I'm already sweating looking at this.
Whenever you are ready, just let it all out. I know, 'cause the enemy inside me, 'cause the enemy inside Get ready for it. Get ready for it.
Very grueling. In local finance news, shares were up on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange while the shekel was also up in foreign currency trading. Here are the late afternoon numbers. Turning to the weather, and the forecast is for partly cloudy skies with a chance of local showers along the coast. There's still a chance of frost overnight. Here are the expected highs and lows at home and abroad for the next 24 hours. That brings us to the end of this broadcast of IBA News. I'll be back on Sunday for another daily edition of IBA. I'm Ari O'Sullivan, wishing you a good evening, a great weekend, and shalom from Jerusalem.